This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
And I got to say, of all of the cases that we've been following, the text messages in the Lori Vallow case have been some of the most interesting, haven't they? I mean, we especially get into like the love letters between Chad and her. It's mainly just all Chad to her. But they get bizarre. We have a string of text messages here that we're going to be going through. This is courtroom audio. Some may call them steamy text messages. Some may just call them, Lori Vallow text messages. Because it goes from everything to being kind of steamy to like where we buried bodies and that there's some people who are dead who are still alive. I mean, it runs the gamut of a lot of text messages. Here's that courtroom audio from last week in the trial of Lori Vallow, Daybell. FBI Special Agent Doug Hart reading the text messages.
Agent, if you could look at the screen, I see displayed an initial slide and states Exhibit 183. What are we seeing here?
This is a line that I located in the contact section of loriforstyle at iCloud.com. And it was saved under the name of Bishop Shumway. It was created on October 28th, 2018. What stands out about this particular contact is that the telephone number...
Objection, Your Honor. He's now giving a narrative explanation.
Sustained.
Okay. So what is it that it stands out about the slide we're looking at?
What stands out is that the phone number 208-690-9374 is the known cellular telephone number for Chad Daybell.
Okay. And what was the date this contact is reflected in the cell phone data or the iCloud account of Lori Vallow?
It was created on October 28th, 2018.
And just so that we're clear, that date had significance because why?
Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow met at a Preparing a People conference in St. George, Utah on October 26th, and that conference spanned the 26th, 27th, and 28th of October.
Okay. Is this the first known electronic evidence of contact between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow?
It is.
So turning to the next, which is labeled SMS section, loriforstyle at iCloud.com, what are we seeing here?
This is a text string between Lori Vallow and Audrey Baratario that took place on January 23rd of 2019.
Okay. If you could read to us into the record what that text string was.
Yes. Line 2585. Hi, Audrey. This is Lori. I would love to talk to you sometime. Text me or call me. I'm excited to be able to talk to you about what we both know. Line 2584. Oh, hi, Lori. Guess you talked to Chad. Ha ha. Line 2580. Did he tell you I have a crazy work schedule? I might be able to talk tonight. I'll have to play it by ear, but it wouldn't until ABT 9:30 p.m. or after. The same for tomorrow. Line 2578, Lori Vallow to Audrey Baratario. He did. That's okay. Just let me know when you are available. No pressure. I just think it's fun to talk to someone who knows what's really going on. Line 2576. Reply from Audrey Baratario to Lori Vallow. So what times usually work for you? I usually talk to him on my lunch breaks in Mondays or Tuesdays. Sunday afternoons I can talk.
Agent, my question is, this communication by the defendant with Audrey Baratario, what, if any, significance did it have to you?
The significance that it had to me is the reference to what Lori Vallow and Audrey Baratario both knew.
Why is that significant?
It's significant because Chad Daybell had disclosed to Audrey Baratario his plans to marry Lori Vallow.
Okay. And did it also indicate anything about an establishment of a friendship or a relationship between Audrey and Lori?
Yes, Chad had told Audrey Baratario that his wife, Tammy Daybell, was going to die and that he and Lori were to be married, but he wanted Audrey to act as a buffer between he and Lori during the ensuing time period until Tammy Daybell died.
And does it indicate that Audrey Baratario was willing to engage in that friendship with Lori?
Based on the text string, yes.
Okay. Now, turning to an SMS text section in the Lori for Style at iCloud.com from March 20th, 2019. Can you explain to us what we're seeing here?
These are some texts that took place on March 20th of 2019 between Lori Vallow and Alex Cox.
Could you read those into the record, please?
Line 1842 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. I'm finding out some great stuff about you. I'm going to go do some ceilings. Can't wait to share all the things I learned about you. Wow, you're going to like it. It explains a lot. Line 1840, text from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. Okay, hurry up, please. Line 1837, reply text from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Going to check everything with my source tonight to make sure I got this all right, but it's really good. We can talk about it tomorrow, hopefully.
Now, Agent, why did you include this in your summary?
During the course of the investigation, it became apparent that Chad Daybell acted as a quasi-religious leader and that Alex Cox was involved in the alleged conspiracy as it related to the deaths of the children and Tammy Daybell. And this is an instance where Lori Vallow is communicating to her brother Alex Cox regarding the things that she is learning about him. The reference to going to check with my source tonight, I believe, is a reference to Chad Daybell.
Objection calls for speculation.
That's overruled, but obviously you can go into that on cross.
Very good. Thank you.
Now, looking at this text, you indicated that Chad became a quasi-leader. Was there evidence to suggest why Lori Vallow would be communicating that to Alex Cox rather than just Chad?
There were occasions where Lori Vallow made direct communications regarding religious matters or religious concepts, but it was frequent and repetitive that Alex Cox, Melanie Boudreau, others would solicit Lori to check or inquire with Chad Daybell and then would return answers back to those individuals.
In context of the evidence from the iCloud and the other evidence in totality of the case, was there evidence on Lori Vallow's sort of position power with regard to those people in religious concepts?
Yes.
What was that position power and what evidence was there of that?
Her position was right next to Chad Daybell. The two of them were in an elevated position, and others would seek their counsel and advice as it related to alleged revelations and visions and so forth.
And in seeking that counsel or information, was there any evidence at times that Alex Cox or others would seek direction or instruction from Lori Vallow?
Yes.
And is that reflected in some of the text that you've provided in summary?
It is.
Was it is it reflected throughout both iCloud accounts and the overall account of Lori Vallow?
Yes, it is.
Now, turning towards an SMS text from Lori for style at iCloud.com, can you tell us what we're looking at, from line 1763 through 1761?
This is another short text string between Alex Cox and Lori Vallow that took place on March 26th of 2019.
Okay. And could you read those lines into the record, please?
Yes. Line 1763, text from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. Correct. Charles's body is alive. Line 1762 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. What did you learn? Line 1761 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. A lot. Still working on it. We'll call you later.
Why was this series of the SMS included in your summary?
These short texts actually contain a lot of information regarding what was taking place in the investigation.
How so?
Chad Daybell had identified Charles Vallow as somebody who was a dark entity whose body had been possessed by any number of spirits, which were named with various names. And so this first text, when Alex Cox is reaching out to Lori Vallow, he's affirming that Charles Vallow's body, his physical body, is still alive, and inquiring what Lori Vallow had learned about that, which she replied she had learned a lot and would contact him later.
Okay. And so learned a lot. What does still working on it mean in context of the iCloud account and the overall investigation?
We see, or I saw, very frequent usage of that particular term. We are working on things, and that is a direct reference to this belief that they were in a battle against zombies and dark entities, and so when they would talk about working on something, they were making a reference to their efforts related to that.
This is misstating the evidence that's actually been put in.
I think it's beyond the scope of what's been entered, so I'll sustain that.
Okay. When you say they said working on it, was it often Lori Vallow herself saying working on it?
Yes.
Okay. And in your review of the text section in the MMS and the various iCloud accounts reflecting Lori Vallow's statements or state of mind, did you see evidence that her brother believed what she was saying?
Frequently.
Okay. Did you see evidence reflected that would show that Alex Cox was seeking input or direction from his sister with regard to the various potential bad spirits or people's physical body?
Yes.
Turning to the SMS section of LollyTime at iCloud.com, and I see a group of text from July 9th of 2019. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And I noticed that each of these slides have appeared chronological, and forgive me if I didn't ask, in preparing your summary, how did you put the various text into your summary?
I did that chronologically. So in the summary, you'll see we may move back and forth between Lori for Style at iCloud.com and LollyTime at iCloud.com. For the most part, it's Lori for Style in the beginning and the ending. of this summary exhibit, and most of the middle of it is taken from lollytime@icloud.com. But I placed all of the data chronologically.
Why?
I think that paints the most accurate picture of what was taking place as it relates to the communications. If you separate them out into various sections, then it becomes very fragmented. And I believe that chronologically, these events took place chronologically, so it made sense to arrange the exhibit chronologically.
Okay. And so we're seeing a text communication July 9th, 2019, between Lori Vallow and Melanie Boudreau. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could you read those into the record, please?
Yes. Line 3135 from Lori Vallow to Melanie Boudreau. They have an elaborate plan. I'll call you soon. Line 3134 from Melanie Boudreau to Lori Vallow. I could take all the babies with and drive and take our stuff. Line 3133 from Lori Vallow to Melanie Boudreau. You can't go at all. We both need to stay here to defend ourselves. Line 3132 from Lori Vallow to Melanie Boudreau. It's coming to a head. This week will change everything.
Okay. Why did you include that particular series of text from Lori Vallow in your summary?
Your Honor, the only way you can answer that is through hearsay evidence.
I'll sustain that objection.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I guess I don't understand the objection.
Your Honor, would the court like me to clarify?
Maybe approach sidebar, because I really don't understand.
Well, I'd like to have the question reread, please.
Okay.
All right, upon rehearing the question, I misheard that. I'll overrule that objection.
Thank you.
Apologies.
Thank you. Did you hear the question?
Do I have it repeated? I'm sorry. Okay. The timeline in this case is important. So this text string took place in the evening of July 9th, 2019, which is approximately 36 hours before Charles Vallow was killed. These texts are a reference to events surrounding that.
Okay.
And again, Judge, I'm going to object, just for the record, that the only way he could have gotten that information was specifically to Melanie Boudreau is through hearsay evidence from Melanie Boudreau.
All right, well, he's testified it's through information obtained through these iCloud accounts. So for that, and because they've been admitted, I'll overrule the objection.
Thank you.
All right. And so the timing of this communication by Lori Vallow was significant to you in relation to the death of Charles Vallow?
Correct.
Okay. And in the text, it was a text from Lori Vallow. In her own words, it's coming to a head. This week will change everything.
Yes.
Okay. And when in context of the investigation and the overall review of the iCloud, what does "it's coming to a head" mean to you?
It's a reference to the marriage between Charles Vallow and Lori Vallow. Their marriage, from the communications and the totality of the investigation, had deteriorated substantially.
And I'll object to speculation that she's calling for him to speculate as to what these texts mean.
I'll sustain that.
Okay.
And ask to strike that from the record.
All right, the final part of that answer will be stricken from the record based on the objection. The jury's instructed not to please consider that particular response.
Okay. So in your review of the evidence, in your review of the iCloud, did you learn from the defendant's own words that her marriage to Charles Vallow was deteriorated?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, I believe you earlier talked about that she characterized Charles Vallow as an obstacle. Is that correct?
That's argumentative, Judge.
Overruled.
It was actually Chad Daybell who used the phrase obstacles relating in connection with these individuals.
Okay. And so it's coming to a head, that statement from the defendant. Was there evidence within the iCloud that you reviewed, the defendant's own words, that reflected whether or not she wanted Charles Vallow out of her life as her husband?
Yes.
Okay. Let's turn to some additional text from Lonely Time on July 9th, 2019, reflected in the next slide. Could you please look at lines 3120 and 3072? Do you see those?
I do.
Could you read those into the record, please?
Yes. Line 3120 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Getting sleepy, so I'm going to need you to stay close to me the next couple days. Mel, too. She can't go to Utah. They are planking some kind of intervention, but want Mel out of the way, so I'm left alone. I need to come get the stuff at your house tomorrow and secure it. Lots to do. Thank you for standing by me. It's all coming to a head this week. I will be like Nephi, I am told, and so will you. Line 3072, text from Lori Vallow to Melanie Boudreau. Al is here. Charles says he will come over in the morning.
Why did you include these particular texts from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox and Melanie Boudreau in your summary?
Your Honor, I'll object that these takes things out of context. He specifically stated that he is going in line by line, and it looks like there's almost 100 lines between these two texts.
I'll overrule the objection, and I think it's appropriate for cross-examination.
Very good. Thank you.
I'm sorry, the question was, why did you include these particular text communications from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox and Melanie Boudreau in your summary?
During the course of the investigation, we found out that Adam Cox, another brother of Lori Vallow, had flown in conjunction with Charles Vallow to try to approach Lori regarding the things that were taking place. And so that's why I included these communications.
Okay. And turning to line 3120, I will be like Nephi, I am told, and so will you. In your review of the evidence and your research on the items of relevance in the iCloud account, what is Nephi?
Nephi is the name of an ancient prophet whose life is documented or chronicled in a book of scripture called the Book of Mormon. And so he is one of that book of scripture spans from 600 BC to roughly 400 AD, and Nephi is one of the first prophets that is documented in that particular book.
Okay. And the phrase, I will be like Nephi, other than an ancient prophet, was there significance to the investigation that merited review in the use of the word Nephi as applied to Lori Vallow and Alex Cox?
Objection. Calls for speculation. He's already indicated that Nephi is found throughout the Book of Mormon, which is hundreds of pages long.
I'll sustain the objection.
Thank you.
In terms of Lori's use and her own words identifying herself as Nephi, what were the situations involving Nephi that were relevant to the investigations?
Objection. Calls for speculation.
I think there need to be some additional foundation. You're going to go into that term and what it means in the context of these communications.
Okay. So in terms of foundation, are you aware of historical attributes or story significance to the prophet Nephi?
I am.
Okay. What were the historic accounts related to the prophet Nephi?
Okay, objection vague. There are hundreds of stories about Nephi.
That's overruled.
Thank you.
The witness knows, the witness can answer.
The primary one relates to an incident where Nephi was commanded by God to slay an individual named Laban.
Your Honor, I'm going to object as this is speculative.
Overruled.
I'm sorry, you can keep going. You said it was about Nephi was commanded to slay Laban.
Yes.
And what was the rest of that particular historic accounting of the prophet Nephi?
Simply put, Laban was in possession of records that Nephi and his family wanted to possess before they left Jerusalem, and Nephi was commanded by God to slay Laban to obtain those records.
Okay. And so was Laban considered a good guy or a bad guy?
Bad guy.
Again, Your Honor, based on his response to the question, I believe it's irrelevant, and that it specifically doesn't have anything to do with the crime that's charged here, and it doesn't even correlate.
Well, there's a reference to the term in the text, and I'll allow a little more on this, but it's getting outside the scope of, I think, what's relevant. Pretty quick here, Ms. Smith.
The defendant herself likened herself to Nephi, correct?
Yes.
And the defendant likened Alex Cox to Nephi, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And if I understand correctly, Nephi was commanded to kill Laban.
That's correct.
I'm going to object as to vague. Nephi was commanded to do lots of things.
Overruled.
And the date that the defendant likens herself to Nephi was July 9th, 2019?
Yes.
She also told Alex he was like Nephi, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in the text communication from Lori Vallow to Melanie Boudreau, did Lori Vallow indicate on July 10th, 2019, that Alex Cox was with her?
Yes.
Okay. Now, defense counsel pointed out, and we were going to chat about this in a minute, I noticed that there's a line number and a date, and then it appears to have a different line number and a different date in your summary. Why didn't you include every text between those two?
If I included every text between the two accounts, we would be at well over 8,000 text messages. And so I chose those texts that I felt were in context and were relevant. But oftentimes there would be 3 or 4 people texting with Lori Vallow at the same time, and some of those texts in between have no relevance whatsoever to this case. Other texts were very redundant. We see the same type of communication over and over and over again. And so I chose those text messages that I believed were relevant to this case and was cautious not to prepare this summary exhibit where I'm taking things out of context.
Okay. And if you included every text, it really wouldn't be a summary, would it?
No, it wouldn't.
Okay. Now, turning towards some chats that were in Lori for Style, can you tell us what we're seeing next on slide 7?
Yes, this is a chat in the iCloud account generally was amongst multiple individuals, and the chat would contain could contain numerous texts. This is a chat between Lori Vallow, Cole Vallow, and Zach Vallow. Cole Vallow and Zach Vallow are Charles Vallow's sons.
Okay. And this is communication from Lori Vallow in that chat?
Correct.
Okay. Could you please read into the records the communications that Lori Vallow had and to whom?
Certainly. So, July 12th, 2019. Hi, boys. I have very sad news. Your dad passed away yesterday. I'm working on making arrangements, and I'll keep you informed with what's going on. I'm still not sure how to handle things. Just want you to know that I love you, and so did your dad. 3:41 p.m. on the same date. Lori, what happened? 3:43 p.m. We are still waiting for the ME report. I'll let you know more when I can. 5:54 p.m. Lori, what the fuck happened? You can't just tell us out Dad died and disappeared. You're not too busy to just let us know he died and disappear.
Why did you include this particular series of chats in your summary?
For timeline purposes, this series of communications took place the day following Charles Vallow's death, and it is indicative of the communication from Lori Vallow to Charles Vallow's sons regarding their father's death, but excludes the manner of death.
Now, let's move ahead. In terms of within a few hours of that on July 13th, could you tell us what we're seeing in the SMS section of Lolly Time at iCloud.com?
Yes. This is a series of texts between Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow, and ultimately Melanie Boudreau. Subsequent to Charles Vallow's death, Brandon Boudreau, Melanie Boudreau's husband, brought an individual to the house to talk with Melanie, and this series of texts is in regards to that person.
Okay. And Lori Vallow was a part of this text communication, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it was a text communication between Lori and Chad and included Melanie Boudreau.
Correct.
Okay. Could you please read those into the record?
Yes. Line 3002 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I will check all bloomer and husband. Line 3001 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Good idea. Line 3000 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Allie Bloomer is 4.1 dark. Her cop husband is 3 dark. I suppose Brandon doesn't know yet about the discovered Charles's texts. Line 2996 from Lori Vallow to Melanie Boudreau. Allie Bloomer's husband, 3, and then a dark emoji.
And so these texts, involving Chad, Lori, and then ultimately Melanie Boudreau were between 9:30 p.m. and around 10:05 p.m. on the 13th, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And why did you include these texts between that time in your summary?
I included them because they demonstrate that anyone who tried to intercede was identified as dark.
I don't understand how.
I'm going to object. That's speculative, and we're now getting into the weeds.
I'll sustain that, and we should have the answer stricken, I presume.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. The previous answer will be stricken, not to be considered by the jurors.
Okay. So, did you have in context of the iCloud, did it reflect who Allie Bloomer was?
Allie Bloomer was a friend of Melanie Boudreau.
Okay. And
Brandon Boudreau.
Okay. And did you learn whether or not Allie Bloomer had approached Melanie Boudreau about her situation with Lori Vallow?
It was Brandon
Objection
Boudreau.
hearsay, Judge.
Overruled.
It was Brandon Boudreau who brought Allie Bloomer and her husband, who was a police officer, over to the house to talk to Melanie Boudreau.
Okay. And then this text communication reflects reaching out by Lori Vallow and Chad Vallow, and ultimately to Melanie Boudreau about the sort of status of Allie Bloomer and her husband.
Correct. Those two individuals visited the Boudreaux residence, and they were identified as dark.
Now, sticking within this same time frame, within a day and a half of Charles Vallows' text, there were other text or SMS that you considered relevant?
Yes.
Can you tell us what we're seeing as reflected in line 2967 from July 13th?
Yes, this is a text between Chad Daybell or a text from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow regarding plans for the two of them to get together.
Can you please read that?
Yes. Line 2967. Concerning the 2 weeks, BYU Idaho's graduation is July 23rd. Adam is getting his bachelor's, and Leah and Joe are getting their associates. They are all walking in the same commencement ceremony. I feel she will be gone by then, but I will still have that hoopla to deal with because a lot of my and Adam's family are coming and will stay for July 24th. So I believe that's why the Lord hinted I might not get to be with you until that is over. Please ask about that.
And were there additional text associated with that conversation?
Yes.
Are we seeing those on the next slide?
There's a series, the next few slides, I believe.
Okay. If you could, what's the next date and time of that text in this series of communication between Chad and Lori?
July 14th of 2019.
Could you read the text into the record, please?
Yes. Line 2962 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Good morning, my most beautiful Lily. Thanks for joining me in the shower this morning. Wow. Getting ready to leave for my meetings. Does noon your time look like a time we could talk? I love you so immensely that the whole universe knows it, and very soon the people on this little blue globe will know it too. Line 2961. Morning, sunshine. Sure. Call me if you get a chance. And that's from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell.
And let's move to I believe this is the rest of the series.
It is the rest of the series, but then it gets into also another aspect of the iCloud accounts.
Okay. If we could finish this series and then we'll go back and finish this aspect, is that okay?
Okay.
Okay.
So the last in the series would be 2935 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I love you so much. You are my greatest desire and my best friend. Now on with the story.
Okay. So turning back to what began with the series, why did you include this series of text communications from Chad and to Lori and vice versa?
I included this due to the reference that Chad Daybell stated, I feel she will be gone by then. And then at the end, I believe that's why the Lord hinted I might not get to be with you until that is over.
What relevance did it have in terms of your review of the iCloud and the evidence overall?
The reference to Tammy Daybell being gone and the ability for Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow to be together at a future point.
I'm going to object to speculation and ask that it be stricken.
I'll sustain that.
So following up on that, had you seen previous texts and communications or heard from witnesses that Chad Daybell had told people Tammy Daybell was going to die?
From witnesses that were interviewed, yes, we heard repeatedly that Chad Daybell had told numerous persons that Tammy Daybell
Objection, that's hearsay, Judge.
Go ahead, Ms. Smith.
Thank you. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. If you want to argue in response to the...
Oh, thank you. Your Honor, this is part of the relevance of a summary of an agent. It has to be viewed in context of the evidence overall. We aren't authoring the statement that Tammy was going to die for the truth that the person said it. What we're doing is to put this text and this communication in conversation, in context, put this communication in context of what the co-conspirators are discussing. And so while defense counsel's argument is that it's speculation, in context of his knowledge, his experience, his analysis, his looking at all of the iClouds, it's not speculation.
Well, it was hearsay was the specific objection lodged.
Well, and, Your Honor, it's a statement of a co-conspirator.
Okay.
In furtherance of conspiracy.
Well, go ahead, Mr. Thomas.
I guess I'm just saying, I'm saying what he's saying is that the information that he got from other people that Tammy was going to die is hearsay. That was his response.
No, that wasn't his response, Your Honor.
All right, counsel, I'm going to sustain the objection. You can ask another question, Ms. Smith.
Okay. Had you learned from the review of iCloud and information that Chad Daybell told people that Chad, in his own words, said that Tammy was going to die?
Yes.
Okay. And knowing that information, did that put this text and SMS message in context?
Yes.
Okay. There's also a line that says, please ask about that. What, if any, significance did that line have to you?
During the course of the communications, there were several times where Chad and Lori would ask one another to seek confirmation of a specific plan or event that may take place in the future.
And so in this is an example where Chad is asking Lori's advice.
He's asking her to ask about what he's just laid out.
Okay. The next in that series has a line, "Good morning, my most beautiful Lily." What, if any, significance did that line have to you?
Both Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow had multiple names that they used for one another. Chad was known as Chad Daybell, Raphael, and James. Lori Vallow was known as Lily and Elena.
So they would call each other these names in between various texts?
Yes, for the most part, Lily was used very frequently by Chad Daybell in reference to Lori Vallow.
Okay. And is this discussion of thanks for joining me in this shower this morning evidence that Lori was physically with Chad?
No.
Objection, that's calling for speculation.
Sustained.
Do you know or have information on July 14th, 2019 at 7:42 in the morning whether Lori Vallow was physically with Chad Daybell?
She was not. She was in Arizona.
Okay. And looking at this text, is it uncommon between the two that they would imply they had been with each other when physically that was impossible?
That's correct.
Is there any other reason of significance to you why you included this particular part of the text string?
The reference by Chad Daybell that soon the people on this little blue globe will know how much he loved Lori Vallow.
Okay. Why was that significant?
It's directly relevant to their relationship with one another and their plans together in the future.
Your Honor, he's making I'm going to object. I think he's making a conclusion that's best made by the jury itself, not by a witness.
All right, well, the objection's not timely, so overruled.
Thank you.
All right. Now, turning to sort of the end of this line of text communication, you indicated, "I love you so much. You are my greatest desire and best friend. Now on with the story." What did that mean?
In the iCloud, in the SMS section as well as the email section, there is a story authored by Chad Daybell entitled The James and Elena Story. It is partly accurately historical as to real events, and it is partly fantasy. And so this is a segment that Chad Daybell sent to Lori Vallow on July 14th of 2019 that contains a part of this James and Elena story.
And you in your summary didn't include the whole story of James and Elena?
No, I did not.
Why did you pick portions?
I picked those portions that I felt were illustrative of how Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow met and some of the significant events that occurred early on in their relationship that were journaled or chronicled by Chad Daybell.
Okay. And so these portions had relevance in terms of timing on when he sent them?
Not so much on timing of when he sent them versus the contents.
Okay. And but these were sent. This one, that I believe we're seeing one of those texts on line 2933 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow on July 14th, 2019.
Correct.
Less than 3 days after her husband died.
Correct.
Okay. Could you please read that into the record?
Yes. Line 2933, text from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. They would both attend the same event in mid-November, and it seemed like that day would never arrive. Each day they opened their hearts to each other a little more. James knew he could trust her with the mysteries of the universe that had been revealed to him. He knew they had been married before, and they had been close friends with the Savior when he lived in Jerusalem. James had served in an important position in the Lord's church, and Elena had been his beloved spouse and best friend. That relationship was now meant to continue in this lifetime.
And did that text exchange between Lori and Chad continue?
Yes.
And that was at July 14th at 3:05. The next one.
Correct.
Okay. Could you please read that one into the record?
Yes. Line 2930. Text from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. As James and Elena talked on the phone, he tried to delicately describe their connection to each other, and he was delighted that she believed him. He also shared that they had been married at other times on a previous world, and she accepted that information as well. James was overjoyed to have these memories restored to him because he truly loved her with all of his heart. He knew they were meant to be married again and complete important missions together before the second coming. He was ecstatic that she was receiving confirmation of these things as well. As they talked on the phone, the spiritual connection was so intense that it also produced physical desires, and it was as if their spirits were making love despite the great distance between them. James knew his spirit was visiting her during those occasions. He also became aware...
Objection misstates the actual text.
It was misread.
I'm sorry, what did I misread?
If you want to just start again at James knew his spirit, we don't need to start all over again.
All right. James knew his spirit was visiting her during those conversations. He also became aware that his spirit would visit her at night, and they would wrap around each other in a sensual embrace. Kissing her was so wonderful and real, and he knew that the next time they saw each other, he needed to kiss her. He wouldn't be able to resist holding her. He was absolutely in love with her in every way.
Why did you include those fraction of the James and Elena story in your summary?
I included those because of the insight they give into the way in which Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow met and how their relationship began.
Turning to the next lines in Lolly time, line 2915 from July 14th, 2019. Could you please read what's included in slide 13?
Yes. Line 2915, text from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Hanging in there, but really missing you too. Please find out the name of Mel's campout in Utah. I have no intention of going, but I feel it is our avenue to get together, whether she is still here or not. Line 2914 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Zion's family camp. Mel speaks Wednesday night and Dave speaks Thursday night. Shelley M. is their main speaker. I roll. Line 2913 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Well, that should work for me to get away, though. I spoke at it 2 years ago, which is when I first met Mel. What time do you fly out tomorrow? Line 2913 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. My trip to speak at the camp, July 24th through 26th, has been approved and is now on the calendar.
Why did you include that series of text between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow in your summary?
During the course of the investigation, we discovered travel that Chad Daybell undertook July 24th through the 26th, where he flew to Arizona to visit Lori Vallow. This is the story that he came up with to justify his travel.
Did their texting continue on that 14th?
It did.
Can you please identify in reading the record what is contained on slide 14?
Line 2889 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I need so badly to just gently kiss you for hours. Line 2888 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. It would likely lead to other activities. Line 2887 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Likely or luckily. Line 2886 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. It would luckily lead to nakedness.
Okay. So this text exchange between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow occurred on July 14th around 8:30 at night.
Correct.
Okay, and that's of 2019.
Yes.
Okay. Just about 3 days after Charles Vallow was killed?
Correct.
Can you please identify in reading the record what's in the chat section of Lori for Style on line 2127?
Yes, this is a continuation of the chat between Lori Vallow, Cole Vallow, and Zach Vallow on July 15th, 2019. Okay, Lori, it's been 3 days. You let us know our father passed away over a text message. 3 days and we haven't heard from anyone. The only information we have is that one text from you saying he passed away. You disappeared after that. We need any information you have. What happened? When did it happen? How did it happen? Where is he now? Are there any funeral plans? And can Zach and I be part of it? We talk to him all the time and now he's gone. He was our dad and we loved him very much. We deserve answers. Also, why have you been the only one to contact us? We haven't heard from Colby or Tylee. I know they are affected too. I called Colby recently too, but he didn't answer. Is JJ safe, and what does he know? I need to be kept in the loop about this all. This isn't a nonchalant topic you can just throw a text at and be done with it.
Why did you include this particular chat from Lori for Style in your summary?
Mainly just to show the communication between her and Charles Vallow's children, and the fact that she did not communicate what had taken place.
Okay. And so she had communicated on July 12th with them about their father dying?
Correct.
Did you find evidence that she gave them any information in the text that you saw from July 12th to July 14th about what happened to their father?
No.
But the text that we saw between her and Melanie Boudreau and her and Chad had occurred in that intervening period?
Correct.
In that intervening period, did you see any evidence in her text communication with people of sorrow or regret or remorse over Charles Vallows' death?
Objection, it's not relevant.
Sorrow, remorse, and regret are consciousness of guilt and are highly relevant to a defendant's state of mind.
It's moved to strike, and it's also speculative.
Yeah, okay, first, no speaking objections or responses, please. So the objection is overruled.
In the text messaging and the account that you saw of Lori Vallow from the time she notified Charles Vallow's sons on July 12th of his death to the time that Charles Vallow's sons reached out on July 15th, did you find any evidence or evidence of remorse, regret, or sorrow in the defendant's communications with anyone?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I believe that's the jury's province to decide that.
Overruled.
None.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
with Tony Bruschi.
There you go, a little look into the text messaging mind part of Lori Vallow. Like I said, they kind of ran the gamut from, I guess kind of steamy all the way to bodies and zombies and just, If you like the podcast, press subscribe wherever you download podcasts so you don't miss any breaking updates and discussions on the cases as we follow them for you right here. I'm Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.